Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Unfiltered commentary. And that's your truth, the real truth. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for your support. Welcome back. I don't normally do this, but after seeing Created Equal, the documentary on Clarence Thomas, based on his book, Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words, what an extraordinary life. What an extraordinary man. He is the shining example that anyone from anywhere in this country, the reason why this country is the greatest country in the world, as far as I can tell, will always be the greatest country in the world. Because anyone from anywhere can reach great heights, giving your personality, your work ethic, your determination, your intelligence. And let's tell the truth here. Intelligence, IQ, is a huge, huge factor in your life and where you want to go, where you want to advance, and has nothing to do with color. And I recommend this greatly, especially I recommend this to Democrats. No, honestly, because the Democrat mantra right now, and it has been at least since the Lyndon Johnson Great Society programs, have been, and they still do today. I mean, we're in the middle of July in 2021, and they still think, the Democrats, especially the progressives, the racist, horrible racist people, they think that all black people think the same. And if they go out of that mold, i.e. Justice Thomas, there's something wrong with them. They're mentally incapacitated. They're evil. They have to be stopped and destroyed. And that's the way the Democrats have always thought. And I was a Democrat my whole life. In fact, I was a local elected official here in upstate New York in the year 2000, and I was the head Democrat on the local city council here as his president. And I left the party in 2013. As I slowly realized the Democrat Party that I loved as a boy, as John Kennedy, doesn't exist anymore. And it's an extraordinary story from an extraordinary man. And I want to tell you, this guy came from nothing. I mean, he came from nothing. It's amazing to me. He started off, born in, I believe it was rural Alabama. As you can see here from this picture, the conditions that he lived in. I know this was considered a decent house at the time for him. He later moved into an apartment where there were ditches in front of the house because when you used the toilet, it didn't have a sewer hookup. It just flushed the waste through a pipe into the street where the ditch ran in front of the house. With a stench this guy came from less than nothing. I know homeless people that have lived better than this. And it's extraordinary how he picked himself up. He picked himself up. Do you see the ditch there? See the ditch with the wood going across it so you can walk over it? Well, that's where the sewage ran. And he lived with his mother. My understanding, his father left at a fairly young age when he was young. And he had a brother. And I believe his sister as well, but it doesn't really matter. And they ended up, the two brothers, living with the grandfather. I believe it was his mother's father, his maternal grandfather, who was a big-time hard ass, and I mean that in a good way. He was basically, as far as blacks go, in the 60s, economically, he would probably be middle class or upper middle class. I guess he drove for a truck for an oil company. And he was a no bullshit kind of guy. Very much in the vein of my father's people who were old school Italians. You can see here, the Jim Crow colored waiting room. And this is where he grew up. And it shaped his life. There's a picture of his grandfather there. And there's Justice Thomas when he was in seminary. He ended up going to the seminary. And there's his grandfather again. And there he is in seminary school. The only black guy, as you can see. And it was in a really tough spot for him. He said how he knew he could never fit into their world, i.e. he could never be white. But yet he couldn't go back to where he came from. He came too far. And it's an extraordinary story of courage, personal determination. He ran the EEOC for a while. He had several appointments over the years. And then George H.W. Bush appointed him to the Supreme Court. And the confirmation process that went out about it was just horrendous. What they put this man through the hearings, the confirmation hearings, because he didn't fit the mold the Democrats thought he should be. He's a black man in the United States, and he should be voting their way, thinking like them, because all black people think the same. And they still think that today, Democrats. And that, by definition, is racism. It's incredible to me. It's an unbelievable story. I suggest that everyone that gets a chance to see it, And there's a couple of clips in there, as you can see from the picture here. Then Senator Biden, now president, wasn't exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer back then. And look at him pointing and the look on his face. You're going to see a couple of short videos when Justice Thomas, as they pulled this last-minute deal with Anita Hill and his supposedly sexual harassment, and he refused to walk away. He refused to pull his nomination. And that infuriated them. I'll tell you the truth, I'll talk plain English. And I'm sure Justice Thomas would agree, even though he's too gentlemanly and too mannerly to say it out loud, but I'm sure he would think it privately or say it amongst his wife and his friends. You're an uppity blank. That's basically was their attitude. And it was disgusting. It was unbelievable, and I remember it happened. I remember it happening. And I was still a Democrat back then, and I thought it was disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And the venomness and the anger and what they expressed because he wasn't a good boy. I'll talk frankly. He wasn't a good boy. You owe us, Democrats, us white people, because we're on your side. So we tell you what's in your best interest. And if you don't do that, then there's something wrong with you and we have to destroy you. Because we can't have you as an example to other black people. And there's Edward Kennedy, whose brother, John, former President John Kennedy, was my idol when I was a boy. And this piece of blank is sitting here passing judgment on other people in the history that he's had. I'll tell you the truth, Edward Kennedy couldn't hold his brother's blank. And there they are in judgment on a man like Clarence Thomas. So let's look at a few short clips from those confirmation hearings. And we'll talk about after what he went through and the determination he had. and how he put his head down and the lessons that his grandfather gave him, even though he was a hard ass. And towards when he was young, they really didn't get along. He left his grandfather's house. His grandfather wouldn't pay for seminary school. But the lessons taught by his grandfather, I think, produced one of the best Supreme Court justices, at least in my lifetime, and I was born in 1956. So let's look at some of the videos here, and let's talk a little bit about this documentary and Judge Thomas as well. Now we're going to see a couple of clips during the confirmation hearing after the Anita Hill accusation and Justice Thomas's reaction. Frankly, I still believe they thought he would withdraw, and that was the idea. They call it borked, based on Judge Bork, who was there prior and wasn't confirmed and was basically crucified, and he withdrew. Justice Thomas stood up to them. I'm not withdrawing. And that infuriated Democrats being racist because of the fact he wasn't a good boy. He didn't think like them, and he wouldn't do what he was told. That's what I believe, frankly. And I think he believes that too, and so do millions of other people. So let's listen to at least this clip here. There's two of them, considering Judge Thomas's reaction to the accusations and the process that he's going through.
That I ever had any personal sexual interest in her, or that I in any way ever harassed her. This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Now, look at the look on Biden's face. He's turning to his left to talk to or look at Senator Ted Kennedy. And this is not what he expected. He expected the venom and the horrible things that were said about him and the pressure would be too much. And he's like, oh, crap, what do we do now? Not only is he surprised, Joe Biden's starting to get pissed. You're not being a good boy. And he said, Judge Thomas said some very inflammatory things. But here's the problem. You know why Joe Biden's pissed? Because it's true. It's true.
Judge, you're here, though. Some people have been spreading the rumor that perhaps you're going to withdraw. What's Clarence Thomas going to do?
Now, that's interesting. I believe that's Senator Hatch. I'm trying to remember his name. He's not on the Senate anymore. And he called him judge. And then he turned and said, what is Clarence Thomas going to do? It's like man to man. And if you see the disgust on Judge Thomas's face, he is furious. His whole life is basically led up to this moment. And he's got to put up with this shit from racist Democrats. But I want you to particularly pay attention to Joe Biden's facial expressions. And that says it all. So let's listen a little bit what Judge Thomas has to say. It's short. And then we'll show how Biden reacts at the end.
I'd rather die than withdraw. If they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
And he said it twice. He's talking about the process. They drove Judge Bork out. And they're going to try to drive him out on trumped up charges. He called it a modern day lynching, and he's right. Because he wasn't a good boy. He's uppity. And he even said so himself. I'm not being inflammatory. Those are words that Judge Thomas used, and he's absolutely right. He's furious. Absolutely furious. And it's funny, his wife said in the documentary, he had nothing left mentally or physically. It was an ordeal that just took everything out of him. And when he said this at the end, this is his last appearance before the committee, the confirmation committee, he had nothing left, and she's convinced that God gave him the mental and physical strength to fight to the end. And frankly, I believe it. They're religious people. He is an extraordinary man. And it's interesting to see the expressions on Biden's face. Let's look at some more. Now, there's Biden. He has a look on his face that I will call a little bit solemn. It looks like he's maybe having a touch of conscience. Excuse me. But you're going to see in a few seconds that goes away pretty quick because they didn't get their way. They finally have a man with a backbone and a set of balls, and they don't know how to react. I'm going to stop the video towards the end of this when he adjourns the committee for 15 minutes and look at the look on his face. Let's continue.
Not for the purpose of serving on the Supreme Court, but for the purpose of not being driven out of this process. I would not be scared. I don't like bullies. I've never run from bullies. I never cry uncle, and I'm not going to cry uncle today, whether I want to be on the Supreme Court or not.
We're recessed for...
Now look, he's recessed for 15 minutes. Mr. Biden's then senator. Look at the look of disgust on his face, anger, and I believe hatred. You didn't do what we told you. You weren't a good boy. And you stand up to us, you got a lot of nerve. And for those of you that are wondering, I believe the vote was for confirmation 52 to 48. And just look at the very end. I'll play this a little bit more and you'll see the real look on his face.
For 15 minutes.
See him glance up? That disgusted look on his face. Now I want to show you that during the confirmation hearing for Clarence Thomas and after he was confirmed, this is what was going around. This is what was going in national newspapers, magazines. I mean, look at this. Are you effing kidding me? How can Democrats possibly justify any of this? And to make it even worse, the bulk of the venomous behavior, the hatred, came from so-called progressive black Democrats. Why do they hate conservative blacks so much? Because it reminds them that they're the house boys. They're the house blanks. They've been following the Democrats for decades. Like fools. Like fools. So they have to lash out for their racist Democrat masters, for lack of a better term. And I hate to be so graphic about it, but you know what? It's true. Look at this. We all appreciate your indomitable, whiter-than-thou spirit, Clarence, but, of course, he's saying, of course, that the justice that's talking, and plus the other Republicans that are justices on the Supreme Court, are the same. Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. Well, that's not all of it. Isn't that special? Black America's magazine, Emerge. Emerge from what? A pile of shit? Uncle Thomas, lawn jockey for the far right. On a magazine cover, a national magazine. Granted, it's not Time or Life or any of the other ones. That's not the point. There was one I had, and I'm not even going to show it, where it shows a cartoon caricature of Justice Thomas shining shoes of some of the other Supreme Court members. Oh, the Democrats aren't racist. Bullshit. Look at this. Look at this video that's coming up of a cartoon. Unbelievable. Now look at this crap. Before I overturned 53 years of school desegregation, which, by the way, black and white parents both hated, both thought it was ridiculous. It was virtue signaling at a level I can't even tell you about. I must put on my robe. Now, here's a cartoon caricature of Clarence Thomas. Justice Thomas, to be more respectful. Put on my robe. We'll take a wild guess what kind of robe we're talking about here. I'll give you one guess. And it's you got it, Klan robe. This is okay. This is all right. This is acceptable. And every Democrat you'll ever talk to will say, of course it's not acceptable, John. That's ridiculous. So the other two cartoons. But here's the deal. While Democrats are doing this, and they've done it for decades, what you get? Here's what you get. Here's what you get from the everyday Democrats concerning this stuff. Crickets. Well, John, not all Democrats are racist and all that. Well, John, Democrats aren't all racist and all that. Horse shit. Anybody that didn't condemn this, that was an elected Democrat at the time, publicly should be voted out of office. Period. It's despicable. But you know what? He persevered. He got through it. Good for Justice Thomas. Now, that's just a small sample of what's in this documentary called Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words, based on his book. Now, interesting enough, show what scumbags these progressives are. During Black History Month this year, Amazon pulled this video from its streaming service. You got to be effing kidding me. Any Supreme Court judge, let alone black. I don't like to pick him out as black because he wouldn't like that either. But during Black History Month, they pulled the stream for this documentary. These people have absolutely no shame. But I will give them this, though. I'll give them this much credit. They're racist SOBs. They're pieces of crap for God knows how many decades. But now they're not hiding it anymore. How they're getting the nerve not to hide it, I don't know. And even if you didn't vote for Trump, Trump brought out the true colors of these people. The true colors. Justice Thomas prevailed. It's a story that deserves telling. It should be made a movie out of it. Ruth Bader Ginsburg got her movie that nobody watched. You want to bet that if a full Hollywood production about Judge Thomas was put out, not a documentary, a movie on his life, it would make a ton of money, a ton. But they won't do it. Give you an idea how bad these scumbags are. In the African American Museum in Washington, D.C., there's a huge display on Thurgood Marshall. The one first out of two blacks on the Supreme Court. Should they have a huge display for Justice Marshall? You bet. Not a problem. Groundbreaking. First one. It's like the first man on the moon. People have trouble remembering the second man on the moon. Okay. And here's Clarence Thomas. All kinds of publicity about the nonsense that went on his confirmation. In the African American Museum is a little tiny display. And guess what they talk about? Not how he came from nothing, and not how he came up to be on the Supreme Court, but the hassles with Anita Hill and the accusations that were thrown against him, and he got confirmed anyway. That's in the display. You can barely see, but Thurgood Marshall's is huge. And by the way, this is taxpayer funded. Good for you, Justice Thomas. I'm telling you, I have huge respect for you. I'll just leave you with this. only in America, only in the United States, could a black impoverished boy from a single-parent household, when I say poverty, I mean dirt poor, wandered around during the day because your mother worked, you didn't go to school, looking for food kind of nonsense. And he talks about that. They could come up from that and sit on the Supreme Court is a testament to this country, the greatest country that ever lived. Not perfect, but just the greatest. And I'm sure Justice Thomas would agree. Again, I urge everyone to see this documentary. It's really well made. And you'll learn a lot. And if you're not moved emotionally about what happened in Justice Thomas in his life and how he pulled himself up and went through all the nonsense of politics later in his life and come through on the other side, if you're not moved by any of it, then you're not human. Until the next time, folks, goodbye and good luck.